The gunshot cracked through the humid Arkansas air like a thunderclap, and I watched my brother Jesse's hat spin off his head before he crumpled to the ground. Dust billowed from the dry earth of our family's cotton field, the kind that clung to sweat and turned skin to clay. I stood maybe 10 paces away, my own rifle still warm in my hands from the shot I'd fired at a rabbit earlier that morning. But this was no rabbit. Jesse lay there, chest heaving, blood blooming dark across his shirt. His eyes locked on mine, wide, accusing, as if I'd stolen his very breath. "Elias," he gasped, voice ragged as torn cloth. "What in God's name?" I dropped the rifle, fingers numb, heart pounding like a blacksmith's hammer. We'd been playing at soldiers, him and me, the Sutton twins, inseparable since the cradle. 16 today or so, Ma said, though the war had blurred the years into a haze of smoke and loss. Pa gone at Shiloh, brothers scattered to the winds, just us now, mirroring each other in every freckle and stubborn curl of red hair. But that mirror had shattered in an instant. I'd aimed for the scarecrow, practicing for the revenuers who prowled these hills, but the wind must have caught the barrel. Or maybe my hand shook from the fever I'd been hiding. Jesse's laugh from seconds ago echoed in my skull, mocking me. "Help me, brother," he wheezed, clutching at the dirt, fingers clawing furrows. I stumbled forward, knees buckling in the furrows we'd hoed together since we could walk. The field stretched endless under the relentless sun, rows of white bowls waiting for hands that wouldn't come. Ma's cabin squatted a half-mile off, smoke curling lazy from the chimney, oblivious. If I called out, she'd come running, but what then? The doctor in town charged in gold we didn't have, and whispers of the Sutton curse already haunted our name. Bad blood, they said, from some ancestor who hanged for horse thieving. I knelt beside him, pressing my bandana to the wound, but blood seeped through like river mud after rain. Jesse's face twisted, pale as the bowls, his breath coming in wet rattles. "It burns, like fire in my bones." His hand gripped my wrist, strong despite everything, nails digging in. We were the last of the line, sworn to protect each other against the world, yet here I was, the hand that felled him. "Don't let him take the land," he murmured, eyes glazing. "Fight for it. For us." The world narrowed to that spot, the buzz of cicadas deafening, the metallic tang of blood thick in my throat. I nodded, throat too tight for words, as his grip slackened. Jesse Sutton, my mirror, my shadow, went still. The field held its breath, and in that silence I felt the weight settle, not just of his body, but of a choice carving itself into my soul. Run, confess, or bury the truth deeper than this grave I'd unwittingly dug? I dragged him toward the tree line, muscles screaming every step of betrayal. The oaks loomed like sentinels, Spanish moss draping their branches like funeral veils. By dusk, I'd fashioned a shallow pit with a plow blade, covering him with soil that smelled of earth and regret. No marker, no prayers, just the wind whispering through the leaves as I whispered back, "Forgive me, Jesse. I'll make it right." But right for who? The question gnawed as I slipped back to the cabin, rifle slung over my shoulder like a guilty secret. Ma stirred the pot over the fire, her back bent from years of bending to fate. "Where's your brother?" she asked without turning, voice edged with the weariness of a woman who'd buried too many. "Out huntin'," I lied, the words tasting like ash. "Be back soon." She nodded, accepting it like she accepted the rain or the revenuers' threats. The Sutton bloodline teetered on this lie, and as night fell, stars pricking the sky like accusations, I wondered if Jesse's ghost would haunt me, or if I'd become the ghost myself. The sun hung low over the Sutton farm, painting the cotton fields in bloody streaks as I gripped the shotgun tighter, my palms slick with sweat. Pa had sent me and Elias out to check the fence line after that coyote scare last night, but I knew better. His eyes had that haunted look again, the one that came whenever he talked about the old stories. Elias trudged ahead, his boots kicking up dust, whistling some tune from the war that always set my teeth on edge. He was the bold one, always charging into things like he owned the world, while I hung back, calculating the risks, wondering if today was the day the whispers in the attic would spill out into the light. We reached the broken post where the wire sagged like a drunkard's grin, and Elias knelt to inspect it, his fingers tracing the splintered wood. "Look at this, Caleb," he said, voice low and excited. "Ain't no animal did this. See the cuts? Clean like a knife." My stomach twisted. I'd seen Pa's hunting blade go missing last week, and the way Elias had been eyeing it in the barn. No, I pushed the thought down. He was my twin. Blood of my blood, 16 today if the calendar held true. But the farm felt heavier this morning, the air thick with unspoken debts from the war years when Pa lost his leg and Ma her smile. I scanned the tree line, the oaks twisting like accusing fingers. Something rustled, maybe just wind, but my heart hammered anyway. We should fix it quick and head back, I muttered, handing him the coil of wire from my pack. Elias laughed, sharp and defiant. Always the worrier, little brother. What's got you spooked? The birthday ghost? He straightened, wiping his hands on his trousers, and for a split second, his eyes gleamed with something darker than mischief. I remembered the night before, the argument in the kitchen over the inheritance. Pa's will whispered about in corners, splitting the land between us like it could divide our souls. As we worked, hammering the post back into the parched earth, a shadow flickered at the edge of the field. Elias froze, his hammer mid-swing. You see that? He hissed. I nodded, throat dry. It was a rider, horse-lathered and wild, cutting across the neighbor's pasture toward us. Jedediah Crow, our uncle from the next county over, the one who'd fought for the Union while Pa bled gray. He reined in hard, dust clouding around his mount, and dismounted with a limp that mirrored Pa's. Boys, he called, voice gravelly. Your Pa sent word. Trouble's brewing. Raiders hit the river last night, and they're saying it's kin settling scores. Elias stepped forward. Chin jutted out. What kin? We ain't got debts to nobody. But I saw the flicker in his gaze, the way he glanced at the shotgun I'd slung over my shoulder. Uncle Jed eyed us both, his face weathered like old leather. The Sutton blood runs hot, Elias, hotter than most. Your ma's side, well, you know the tales. Twins don't always share the same luck. He spat into the dirt, then mounted up. Tell your pa to bar the doors tonight, and watch each other close. He rode off as quick as he'd come, leaving us in the fading light. Elias picked up the hammer again, but his swings were harder now, splintering more than securing. Raiders, he scoffed, though his voice cracked. Pa's just paranoid. We've got the land, the guns. What could they want? I didn't answer, my mind racing back to the attic trunk I'd snuck open last month. The faded letters from Grandpa Sutton. Speaking of a curse on the firstborn pair, brothers who turned blades on each other over a stolen inheritance in '49. Elias caught my stare. What are you thinking, Caleb? Spit it out. I hesitated, the wire biting into my hands. Nothing, just we stick together is all. But as we finished the fence and turned toward home, the sun dipping behind the hills, I felt the weight of the shotgun like a promise. The farm's shadows lengthened, and for the first time I wondered if the real raiders weren't coming from outside at all. Elias walked a step ahead, his whistle silent now, and I trailed, every crunch of gravel underfoot echoing like a countdown. The sun hung low over the cotton fields, painting the horizon in bloody streaks as Elias and I trudged back from the river, our boots caked with mud that sucked at every step. My twin's laughter still echoed in my ears, sharp, mocking, like he knew something I didn't. We'd spent the afternoon skipping stones, pretending the world wasn't closing in, but the weight of Pa's shotgun slung over his shoulder said otherwise. You think they'll come tonight? I asked, wiping sweat from my brow, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and distant smoke. Elias shot me a grin, all teeth and no warmth. Let 'em. We've got the ridge, and I've been practicing. He patted, the knife at his belt, the one he'd carved from a deer antler last fall. Brave as brass, that's what folks said about him. But I saw the flicker in his eyes, the same fear that gnawed at my gut. The Sutton land had been bleeding feuds since Grandpa's time, lines drawn over water rights and old grudges from the war. The Hargroves across the way had lost men in blue and gray alike, and now their young bucks whispered about settling scores. Pa had warned us at dawn, stay close, eyes open, but Elias, he thrived on the edge, always pushing. We crested the hill, toward the cabin, and there it was, a shadow darting between the oaks, too quick for a deer. My heart slammed against my ribs. Elias, I hissed, grabbing his arm. He froze, then shoved me behind him, shotgun rising like it had a mind of its own. The figure emerged, not a Hargrove raider, but Tommy Wilkes, the trapper from downriver, his face gaunt under a frayed hat. Boys, he rasped, voice like gravel. Your pa sent me. Trouble's brewing faster than a storm. Hargroves rode out at noon. 3 of them, armed heavy. Said they're claiming the east fence line tonight. Elias lowered the gun a fraction, but his jaw stayed tight. Pa no? Tommy nodded, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt. Inside my head, thoughts raced. Pa was out mending the barn, Ma in the kitchen with the little ones. We were the wall between them and whatever hell was coming. "What do we do?" I said, hating how my voice cracked. Elias clapped a hand on my shoulder, his grip iron. "We hold the line, brother, like Pa taught." But as Tommy melted back into the trees, I wondered if his bravery was just a mask for the storm inside him, the one that made him pick fights he couldn't win. By dusk, the cabin felt like a fort, shutters barred and lamps turned low. Ma's hands trembled as she portioned out cornbread, her eyes darting to the windows. "You boys stay put," she murmured, but Elias was already at the door, peering into the gathering dark. I paced the floorboards, the creak under my feet a rhythm to my pounding pulse. What if they came silent like ghosts? The twins, they called us, Elias the fire, me the steady flame, but tonight I felt like tinder waiting for a spark. An owl hooted too close and Elias signaled me to the porch. We slipped out, backs to the wall, the night air cool against my skin. Footsteps crunched in the underbrush. 2, maybe 3 sets. My mouth went dry as a shadow separated from the trees. Jed Hargrove, no more than 18, his rifle glinting in the moonlight. "Suttons," he called, voice low but carrying. "Your pa crossed us one time too many. Hand over the deed or we burn it all." Elias stepped forward, shotgun steady. "This land's ours by blood, Jed. Walk away." I flanked him, heart thundering, clutching the pitchfork like it was a sword. Jed laughed, a bitter sound, and his brothers emerged, tall, scarred from skirmishes we'd all heard tales of. The air crackled with unspoken threats, the kind that turned boys into killers. In my mind, I saw it clear. One wrong move, and the feud swallowed us whole. The standoff stretched, wind whispering through the leaves like a warning. Jed raised his rifle a hair, and Elias mirrored him, finger itching on the trigger. "Last chance," my twin growled. I wanted to shout, to pull him back, but the words stuck. Then a shot cracked from the woods, not from Jed, but behind us. Tommy? No, a ricochet off a branch, spooking a horse somewhere. Chaos erupted. Jed fired wild, the bullet whining past my ear, splintering the porch rail. Elias returned fire, the boom shaking my bones, and one Hargrove yelped, clutching his arm. We retreated inside as more shots peppered the walls, wood chips flying like angry bees. Ma screamed from within, the little ones wailing. Elias reloaded, his face a mask of fury. "They're not taking it," he panted, but blood trickled from a graze on his cheek. I bandaged it quick, hands shaking, thinking how close we'd come. The night settled into an uneasy truce, the Hargroves' voices fading into retreat. But as dawn crept in, Pa returned, face ashen, bearing news of a truce offer, too late maybe, with wounds fresh. Elias met my eyes, a silent pact forming. We'd end this together or not. Yet deep down I felt the fracture widening, the bloodline's curse pulling us toward that birthday shadow we couldn't outrun. The sun hung low over the Arkansas hills, painting the dirt road in bloody streaks as I spurred my horse harder, the rhythm of hooves pounding like my heartbeat. Elias rode beside me, his face set in that stubborn line he got when he wouldn't back down no matter the cost. We'd been out since dawn, scouting the Taylor riders who'd been nipping at our heels for weeks, and now the air tasted of smoke and regret. Pa had warned us to stay clear of their camp near the river, but Elias, with his fire for revenge after what they did to Cousin Will, had dragged me into this fool's errand. "See that rise ahead?" Elias shouted over the wind, pointing to a cluster of oaks where shadows twisted like snakes. His voice cracked just a hair, not from fear but from the raw edge of 16 years carrying too much weight. I nodded, gripping the reins tighter, my rifle slung across my back heavy as sin. The Taylors had 5 men out there, we'd counted, from the ridge earlier, and they were loading wagons with stolen cattle, ours by right. If we hit them quick before they crossed into Texas territory, we could turn the tide. Show Pa we were men now, not boys hiding behind his coattails. I pulled up short at the tree line, dismounting with a creak of leather that felt too loud in the still afternoon. Elias followed, his boots hitting the ground soft, eyes scanning like a hawk's. We circle left, I take the first shot, he whispered, chambering around with a metallic snick that echoed my own nerves. I wanted to argue. Always him leading, me following. But the words stuck. Twins or not, he had that spark. The one that made folks say we were cut from the same cloth, yet his burned brighter, hotter. I crouched low, the damp earth soaking through my trousers, and we crept forward, the acrid scent of gun oil mixing with wild honeysuckle. The camp came into view through the branches. 3 tents sagging under the heat, a fire pit smoldering with half-cooked rabbit, and the men laughing coarse as they roped the last steer. One of them, big as a bear with a scarred cheek, must have been Jim Taylor himself, turned our way, pausing mid-laugh. My breath caught, but Elias was already raising his Spencer steady as stone. Now! He hissed, and the world exploded. The shot cracked sharp, splintering bark near Jim's head. He dove behind a wagon, yelling orders, and chaos bloomed. Bullets, whizzing past like angry hornets, splintering wood and kicking up dirt. I fired back, my round clipping a tailor's hat, sending him scrambling. Elias reloaded smooth, grinning fierce in the smoke. But then a horse whinnied wild, bolting from the picket line straight toward us. I lunged to grab the reins, but the beast reared, slamming me into the underbrush. Pain flared in my shoulder, hot and blinding, as Elias shouted my name. First time he'd sounded scared all day. By the time I staggered up, blood trickling warm down my arm, the tailors were mounting, firing wild as they retreated toward the river ford. Elias dragged me back to our horses, his hands rough but sure, slapping mud over my wound like it was nothing. We got one, he said, breathless, pointing to a body slumped by the fire. But as we rode hard for home, the sun dipping lower, I couldn't shake the image of Jim Taylor's eyes locking on mine through the haze, knowing, promising payback. Elias clapped my back, laughing it off. But I felt the fracture starting, that invisible line between us tightening like a noose. Pa would hear of this, and the feud would swallow us whole before the week was out. The sun hung low over the Sutton farm, painting the cotton fields in bruised shades of orange and purple. Elias wiped the sweat from his brow, his calloused hands leaving streaks of dirt on his forehead. He'd been chopping wood since dawn, the axe biting into the logs with a rhythm that matched his pounding heart. 16 today, him and his twin, Josiah. Ma had baked cornbread and fried rabbit, whispering prayers over the meal like it might ward off the devil she swore lived in their blood. But Elias knew better. The whispers from townfolk weren't just wind. They carried the weight of old curses, the kind that twisted brothers into enemies. Josiah leaned against the fence, whittling a stick with his pocket knife, his eyes sharp and unreadable. Always the quieter one. But Elias felt the storm brewing in him, same as the thunderheads rolling in from the west. You reckon Pa's ghost watches us chopping like this? Josiah asked, his voice low, almost swallowed by the cicada's hum. Elias paused, the axe hovering mid-swing. Pa had died 2 winters back, shot in a saloon brawl over cards and pride. Some said it was Sutton blood, hot and unforgiving, passed down like the rusted musket above the mantel. Don't talk foolish, Elias muttered, bringing the axe down hard. Wood splintered, chips flying like accusations. But he couldn't shake it. Last night, in the dim flicker of the lantern, Josiah had pulled out that old family Bible, tracing the names with his finger. Generations of Suttons, marked by feuds and early graves. We're the last of the line here, Josiah had said, his grin too wide. What if we end it proper? Elias had laughed it off then, but now, with the axe heavy in his grip, the words clawed at him. Ma called from the porch, her voice frail against the gathering dusk. Boys, supper's waitin'. Don't let it go cold. She clutched her shawl, eyes darting between the twins like she could see the fraying thread between them. Elias dropped the axe and trudged toward the house, Josiah falling in step beside him. The path was worn bare from years of their feet side by side, but today it felt narrower, the air thicker. Inside, the table was set simple, cornbread steaming, rabbit grease pooling on tin plates. They ate in silence at first, forks scraping, the only sound besides Ma's soft humming of a hymn. You two actin' strange, Ma said finally, pushing peas around her plate. Birthdays ain't for sulkin'. Elias forced a smile, but Josiah's foot nudged his under the table, deliberate, testing. Elias shot him a glare, and Josiah's eyes gleamed with that familiar mischief, the kind that had gotten them whipped as kids for sneaking whiskey from the barn. But this was different, deeper. Elias remembered the dream from last night. The two of them facing off in the field, hands slick with blood that wasn't theirs. After supper, as Ma cleared the dishes, the twins slipped out to the barn. The air smelled of hay and leather, the horses stamping softly in their stalls. Josiah lit a lantern, its glow casting long shadows that danced like specters. Elias, you feel it, don't you? The pull. He pulled a flask from his pocket, Pa's old one half full of corn liquor. Elias took it, swigged deep, the burn steadying his nerves. Feel what, the heat? It's Arkansas in August. Josiah laughed, sharp and bitter. Not that. The blood. Sutton blood. Pa killed his brother in 49, or so the stories go. Uncle Jeb over a patch of land. And Grandpappy before that knifed his own kin in a duel. He stepped closer, the lantern swinging between them. We're 16 now. Man's age. What if it's our turn to settle the score? Elias's stomach twisted. He'd heard the tales, dismissed them as drunkard yarns. But looking at Josiah, mirror image, same broad shoulders, same dark hair curling at the necks, he saw the fracture. The way Josiah's hand rested on the knife at his belt. Casual but ready. You're talking madness, Elias said, voice steady despite the fear coiling in his gut. He backed toward the barn door, the night pressing in. Thunder rumbled distant, promising rain. Josiah's face hardened, the playfulness gone. Madness or fate? Town says we're cursed. Might as well own it. He lunged, not with the knife but with a shove. Hard enough to send Elias stumbling into a hay bale. Dust billowed and Elias surged up, fists clenched. They grappled, breaths ragged, the lantern shattering on the floor in a burst of flame that licked at the straw. Elias pinned Josiah against the wall, their faces inches apart. Eyes locked in a storm of recognition. Brothers, enemies, the line blurring in the firelight. Ma's scream cut through the chaos from the house. Fire, boys, the barn! Elias released Josiah, and they bolted out, stamping at the flames together. Buckets from the well sloshing as they fought the blaze. Water hissed on embers, but the damage was done. Half the hay gone, the barn wall charred black. As the last sparks died, Josiah clapped Elias on the back, his touch brotherly again. Close one, he muttered. But Elias saw the glint in his twin's eye, the unspoken challenge lingering like smoke. The night deepened, rain finally breaking, washing the fields clean. Yet Elias knew the fire wasn't out, not in the barn and not between them. 16 years old and the blood. The sun hung low over the cotton fields, turning the dirt roads into ribbons of rust as I gripped the reins tighter than I meant to. Jeb's horse snorted beside me, his face pale under the brim of his hat, but he didn't complain. Not yet. We'd ridden out from the cabin at dawn, telling Pa we were checking traps. But the truth was heavier. That stranger from town, the one with the silver watch and questions about the Sutton name, had lit a fuse in us both. Twins or not, we couldn't ignore the whispers anymore. The ones that said our blood carried a curse older than the war scars on these hills. I glanced at Jeb, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the old Taylor place squatted like a forgotten grave. You think he's kin? I asked, voice low against the creak of leather. My heart thumped uneven like it knew something I didn't. We'd shared everything since the cradle. Fights, secrets, the fever that nearly took us both at 10. But this felt different. It's like pulling at a thread that might unravel us. He shrugged, but his jaw tightened. If he is, he ain't welcome. Pa said the line ends clean with us. Jeb was always the bold one, quick with a knife or a lie while I hung back, weighing the risks. But today, caution felt like cowardice. The stranger had cornered me yesterday at the general store, his voice smooth as river silt. Sutton boys, eh? Your grandpappy owed debts that don't die easy. I'd laughed it off, but the words stuck, burrowing like ticks. We tied the horses at the edge of the overgrown yard, the air thick with the scent of wild honeysuckle and rot. The Taylor house was a shell now, windows shattered from when the Rebs torched it during the war. But folks said ghosts lingered, Sutton ghosts, tied to some feud from 49. Jeb kicked at a rusted plow blade half buried in the weeds. Let's just look and leave. No sense stirring. A twig snapped behind the sagging porch. We froze, hands dropping to our belts where the family pistols hung heavy. I drew first, the Colt's grip familiar as my own palm, thumb easing back the hammer. Jeb mirrored me, his breath coming sharp. Show yourself, he called, voice cracking just a hair, brave but not foolish. The figure that stepped out wasn't the stranger. It was Ellie Mae Taylor's boy, Tim, maybe 14, with a shotgun leveled at us, eyes wild and red-rimmed. Sutton scum, he spat. the barrel trembling but steady enough to kill. "You come to finish what your kin started? My ma's grave ain't cold yet." Jeb lowered his gun a fraction, palms out. "We ain't here for trouble, Tim, just passing through." But I saw the lie in his stance. He was coiled, ready to lunge if the kid twitched wrong. Tim's family had lost the farm to our pa in a card game years back, or so the stories went. But grudges like that festered in Arkansas dirt. The boy laughed, bitter and broken. "Passing through? Like your uncle passed through my pa's chest with that Bowie knife? I seen the watch he stole. Same one that feller in town flashed yesterday. He's here for it, ain't he? For blood money." My mind reeled. The silver watch, the stranger had it all right, but if it tied back to our line... I stepped forward slow, gun still in hand but pointed down. "Tim, listen. We don't know about no watch or debts, but if there's truth in it, we can sort it without shooting kids." Inside, doubt gnawed. Was I protecting Jeb or just delaying the storm? He shook his head, tears cutting tracks in the dust on his cheeks. "Too late for sorting. Ma said the Sutton curse takes twins every generation, makes them turn on their own." The shotgun bucked before I could move, the blast tearing through Jeb's shoulder like thunder ripping the sky. He staggered, blood blooming dark on his shirt, and fired back wild, the bullet splintering the porch rail. I lunged at Tim, tackling him to the ground as the smoke cleared, wrestling the gun away while he clawed and screamed. Jeb slumped against the well, clutching his arm, face twisted in pain but eyes burning with that fierce Sutton fire. "Get off him, Cal," he gasped. "Ain't his fault." We bound Tim's hands with my bandana, his sobs echoing as I tore Jeb's shirt to staunch the bleeding. The wound was bad, jagged, pulsing, but he'd live if fever didn't claim him. As we dragged the kid toward his aunt's down the road, the weight of it settled. The stranger wasn't just chasing debts. He was chasing us, and the bloodline's secrets were spilling out one shot at a time. Jeb met my gaze, unspoken words hanging between us like a noose. Whatever came next, we'd face it together, or it would tear us apart. The rifle bucked in my hands, the crack echoing off the bluffs like a thunderclap that shook the morning mist. I ducked behind the gnarled oak, heart pounding as splinters flew from the trunk where James's shot had grazed. We'd been at this for hours, ever since dawn broke over the Sutton homestead, but today felt different, sharper, like the air itself was laced with gunpowder. "John, you coward, show yourself!" James's voice cut through the fog, ragged and furious from somewhere upslope. He was my mirror. Same lanky build, same shock of auburn hair matted with sweat, but twisted now by whatever devil had gotten hold of him these past weeks. Pa always said we were two sides of the same coin, but coins don't turn on each other like this. I wiped the dew from my eyes and peered out. The family plot stretched below, rows of corn wilting under the early frost, the old well house squatting like a forgotten tomb. We'd started as boys wrestling over fishing lines, but the war had carved lines into our faces too soon. Rebel ghosts and Yankee scars that Ma said would heal if we stuck together. Lately, though, James had been whispering about the land, about how Pa's will left it split wrong, how I got the bigger share without earning it. Lies, all of it, but they festered like the gangrene we'd seen in the fields after Gettysburg. A twig snapped to my left. I swung the barrel, finger itching on the trigger, but it was just Ellie, our cousin from the Taylor side, slipping through the underbrush with her skirts hiked up. Her eyes were wide, freckles stark against pale cheeks. "John, stop this madness. He's your brother. Stay down, Ellie," I hissed, pulling her behind the tree. She was the only one who'd speak to both of us since the arguments turned to shouts, then fists. Brave girl, cautious too, always trying to mend what was fraying. "He shot first this morning. Said he'd end it if I didn't hand over the deed." She clutched my arm, nails digging in. "The deed's not worth blood. Remember what Uncle Amos said? The twins are the bloodline's curse, always turning inward." Her voice trembled, but she didn't back away, scanning the ridge for movement. Another shot rang out, closer this time, kicking up dirt at our feet. We scrambled toward the creek bed, mud sucking at our boots. James was methodical, I'd give him that. Witty even in his taunts, calling me the prodigal son while circling like a fox. But I knew the lay of this land better. The creek forked here, giving me a shot at flanking him. As we splashed into the shallow water, Ellie grabbed a loose rock, hefting it like a weapon. "We end this talk, not with lead." Her words were earnest, no dramatics, just the grit of someone who'd lost her own kin to the war. I nodded, but doubt gnawed. James wouldn't listen, not anymore. The birthday loomed, 2 weeks off, and with it the reading of Pa's final words. If we didn't kill each other first, the land would tear us apart anyway. From the bank a shadow shifted. James' rifle raised, his face a mask of resolve. I raised mine, the world narrowing to that single, inevitable pull. The lantern's flame guttered in the draft, casting jagged shadows across the barn's weathered beams as I clutched the old family Bible to my chest. Elias's eyes, wild and feverish, locked onto mine from the hayloft above. His silhouette twisted like a storm-bent oak. "You feel it too, don't you, sister?" he whispered, his voice carrying that eerie echo that had haunted our nights since the curse words surfaced in the yellowed pages. I nodded, though every fiber screamed to run. The bloodline's mark burned hotter than branding iron, pulling us toward the midnight hour when we'd turn 16. I climbed the ladder slowly, each rung creaking under my weight, the air thick with the scent of damp straw and something metallic, like pennies spilled in the dark. Elias had found the passage first, scrawled in Grandfather Sutton's trembling hand. "Twins bound by fate, one must end the other to break the chain, or the whole line bleeds out." We'd laughed it off at first, two peas in a pod, inseparable since the cradle, sharing secrets under the cottonwoods by the river. But now, with the full moon clawing through the slats, doubt gnawed at me. What if it was true? What if Pa's unexplained death last harvest, his throat slit clean as a ritual, wasn't some drifter's work? He reached down, his hand pale and trembling, veins like rivers of ink under the skin. I took it, feeling the pulse sync with mine. Too fast, too synced, like we were one heart splitting in two. "We don't have to do this," I said, my voice barely above the wind rattling the tin roof. But even as the words left my lips, I saw the glint in his eye, the same resolve I'd caught in my own reflection that morning. The farmhands had whispered about the Suttons for generations. Land rich with secrets, but cursed with early graves. Mama's grave was fresh, unmarked, after she tried to burn the Bible years ago. Fire couldn't touch it. The pages just smoldered and reformed. Elias pulled me up beside him. The hayloft, a nest of forgotten tools, and our hidden stash of cornbread wrappers from boyhood games. He flipped open the book, the leather cover warm as fevered flesh. "Listen," he urged, reciting the verse. "On the eve of their bloom, the twins shall clash blade to blade, blood to blood, lest the river run red with all kin." His finger traced the words, and I swear they shimmered as if alive. Outside, the Arkansas night pressed in, cicadas silent for the first time I could remember, like the world held its breath. I snatched the Bible away, slamming it shut. "It's lies, Elias. Pa said the old folks made up stories to keep us in line." But my hands shook, and he saw it. The tremor that mirrored his own. We'd always been like this, finishing sentences, dreaming the same dreams. Last week I'd woken screaming from a vision of him falling into the well, and sure enough, he'd tumbled in chasing a stray cat the next day, bruised but unbroken. Now, as the clock in the house below struck 11, the pull intensified, an invisible tether yanking us closer, forcing choices neither wanted. He drew the pocket knife from his boot, the one Pa carved for us both, handles whittled with interlocking S's. "If we ignore it, Eliza, it'll take us anyway." Like it took them. His voice cracked, and for a moment he was just my brother again, the one who'd shared stolen apples and defended me from bully cousins at family gatherings. But the mark on his wrist, that faint red line like a fresh scar, matched mine perfectly. It had appeared at dawn, itching like fire ants. I backed against the loft's edge, heart pounding against my ribs. The drop below was a good 15 feet to the hard-packed dirt, scattered with rusted nails that could end anyone foolish enough to jump. "Then we fight it together," I said, grabbing his sleeve. "Burn it again or bury it deep." But even as I spoke, my free hand inched toward my own knife hidden in my skirt pocket. The air hummed with tension, the lantern's light flickering as if the flame itself sensed the divide. Elias's face hardened, shadows carving hollows under his eyes. "You know that's not how it works. One of us has to—" He lunged, not with malice but desperation, knife flashing in the dim glow. I twisted away, the blade slicing only air and a strand of my hair that floated down like a fallen leaf. We grappled then, siblings locked in a dance we'd never imagined, breaths mingling hot and ragged. The Bible tumbled open between us, pages rustling like dry leaves in a gale. As we rolled toward the edge, I glimpsed the family plot through a knothole in the wood. Headstones leaning like weary soldiers, all Suttons gone too soon. Elias's knife nicked my arm, a shallow cut that welled crimson, and I felt it echo in him, a shared pain that blurred the lines between us. "Stop," I gasped, pinning his wrist. But his eyes, so like mine, held no recognition, only the curse's cold command. The clock told the half hour, and with it a distant howl rose from the river bottoms as if the land itself mourned what was coming. The sun hung low over the Arkansas hills, painting the Sutton cabin in bloody streaks as I gripped the rifle tighter, my knuckles white against the worn stock. Ezra's shadow stretched long across the porch, his own weapon slung casual-like over his shoulder. But I knew better. His eyes flicked to mine with that same feral glint we'd both inherited, the one that whispered of the bloodline's curse since Pa first told us the tales. 16 today, and the air tasted like gunpowder and regret, the kind that clings after a storm. Think it'll hold off till midnight? Ezra asked, his voice low, almost playful, but his free hand toyed with the silver locket around his neck, the one Ma had split between us before she wasted away last winter. He leaned against the rail, boots scuffing the splintered wood, pretending this was just another hunt. I spat into the dirt, tasting the copper tang of nerves. Ain't no thinking about it. Pa said the twins always turn on the dawn of 16. You feel it too, don't you? That itch in your bones, like the river's calling us to drown each other. My words came out sharper than I meant. But hell, we'd shared a womb, a cradle, every scraped knee and stolen kiss from the neighbor girls. Now with the cabin creaking under the weight of unspoken hate, it felt like the land itself was pushing us apart. He laughed, short and bitter, stepping closer until I could smell the sweat on him, mingled with the wild onion we'd chewed for luck. Always the worrier, Elias. Remember when we tracked that boar last fall? You planned every step and it still gored your leg. Maybe the curse is just stories to keep us in line. But his grip tightened on the rifle and I saw the tremor, same as mine. The hills around us rustled with evening wind, carrying echoes of distant hollers like ghosts of Sutton's past urging us on. We'd spent the morning rigging the old well, dropping stones to test the depth, half joking about how it'd make a fine grave if things went south. But as the shadows lengthened, doubt gnawed at me. What if Pa was right? The bloodline's mark. Twins bound to clash, one surviving to carry the curse forward stronger each generation. Our Uncle Jed had whispered it before he vanished into the war, leaving behind a journal scorched at the edges, pages filled with frantic scrawls about visions of fratricide under the full moon. Ezra clapped my shoulder, jolting me from the thought. Come on, let's check the line for that snares. If we're dying tonight, might as well eat first. His grin didn't reach his eyes, and as we trudged into the underbrush, the rifle felt heavier, like it was forging its own path between us. Thorn snagged my pants, drawing thin lines of blood that mirrored the fresh scar on my palm from yesterday's accident. I'd sworn it was the axe slipping, but Ezra's knowing look said otherwise. Deeper in the woods, the air grew thick, the kind that presses on your chest. We found the first snare empty, rabbit tracks mocking us in the mud. See? World's still turnin', Ezra said, but his voice cracked on the last word. I nodded, scanning the trees for movement. Anything to blame this pull, this magnetic wrongness drawing us toward violence. My mind raced with memories. Us as boys, building forts against imaginary foes, sharing secrets under the stars. Now every glance felt like sighting down a barrel. A twig snapped behind us, sharp as a whip. We both whirled, rifles up, hearts pounding in sync. Nothing but a deer bounding away, white tail flashing. Ezra lowered his weapon first, chuckling nervously, jumpier than a cat in a hailstorm. But I caught it, the way his finger lingered near the trigger, the subtle shift of his stance. The curse wasn't some distant legend. It was here, coiling in our veins like kudzu, twisting brotherly love into something lethal. As we turned back toward the cabin, the first stars pricked the sky, and I wondered if midnight would find us toasting with moonshine or bleeding out on the floorboards. Ezra walked a step ahead now, his silhouette merging with the dusk, and for the first time I envied the clarity of the rifle's cold steel in my hands. Whatever came, it'd be quick. At least that's what I told myself to keep the scream locked inside. The sun hung low over the Arkansas hills, painting the dirt road in bloody streaks as I spurred my horse harder, the twins' shadows stretching long behind us like accusations. Pa's old rifle bounced against my thigh, its weight a reminder that we'd come too far to turn back now. Ellie rode beside me, her face pale but set, clutching the reins like they were the only thing keeping her from unraveling. They're gaining, she whispered, voice tight with the fear she wouldn't name. I glanced back. 3 riders from the Hargrove clan, dust devils trailing their mounts, their shouts lost in the wind but clear enough in intent. We'd stolen the deed to the Sutton land fair and square from that crooked sheriff. But fair didn't mean much when blood feuds ran deeper than the river. My mind raced, piecing together the mess we'd made. John and James, those damn twins, had started this whole nightmare with their birthday brawl last fall. 16 years old and already at each other's throats over Pa's inheritance. Fists flying until knives came out and the ground drank their blood. I'd watched from the porch, frozen, thinking it was just boyish rage turned deadly, but it cracked the family wide open. The Hargroves, smelling weakness, started encroaching on our acres, claiming the twins' death voided the will. Now here we were, me and Ellie, cousins by blood, outlaws by choice, racing to the county seat with proof that the land was ours, if we could just outrun the bullets. The road dipped into a ravine, rocks skittering under hooves as we pushed the horses to their limits. Sweat stung my eyes and I cursed under my breath, remembering John's laugh, how it mirrored James's so perfectly it hurt. They were mirror images, brave to a fault. One cautious in words but quick with a plan, the other witty and reckless. Together they'd tamed wild mustangs and outfoxed rustlers, but alone? That rivalry festered like an untreated wound. We can't fight them head on, I muttered to Ellie, my voice rough from the dust. Not with just the two of us. She nodded, eyes scanning the tree line for cover, her cautious nature kicking in where my grit faltered. A shot cracked the air, splintering bark from a pine just ahead. The horse shied, nearly throwing me, and I yanked it back with a growl. Heart pounding, I weighed our options. The ravine narrowed up ahead, a choke point where ambush might even the odds, but one wrong move and we'd be trapped like rabbits. Ellie's hand brushed mine, steadying, her wit shining through the fear. "Use the river," she said, pointing to the glint of water snaking parallel to the road. "They won't expect us to ford it here. Too swift after the rains." It was clever, born of the same ingenuity that had the twins rigging traps for coons back in better days. I nodded, veering sharp left toward the bank, the current roaring like it mocked our haste. We plunged in, the cold shock hitting like a slap, horses thrashing against the pull. Bullets pinged off rocks upstream, but the water swallowed the sounds, buying us seconds. I clung to the saddle horn, thoughts flashing to the twins' last moments, their eyes locking in that final stupid challenge, knives flashing before I could shout. If they'd teamed up instead of tearing each other down, none of this would touch us. Emerging on the far side, soaked and shivering, we climbed the embankment, the Hargroves' curses fading as they hesitated at the edge. But Ellie slipped on the mud, her ankle twisting with a sharp cry, and I hauled her up, knowing the cost. We'd limp into town, vulnerable, the deed clutched like a fragile promise. By dusk, the county seat's lanterns flickered ahead, a beacon amid the gathering storm clouds. My legs burned from the ride, but resolve hardened in my chest. We'd honor the twins' legacy, not their folly, by holding what was ours. Ellie leaned on me as we dismounted, her breath ragged. "Think it'll be enough?" she asked, doubt creeping in. I met her gaze, the weight of the rifle heavier now. It has to be, or their blood was spilled for nothing. The Hargroves would circle back, I knew, but tonight under the watchful stars we'd stake our claim, and damn the consequences that lingered like ghosts. The sun hung low over the Arkansas hills, casting long shadows that clawed at the Sutton cabin like fingers from the grave. I gripped the shotgun tighter, its barrel still warm from the warning shot I'd fired into the dirt earlier that afternoon. My twin brother Elias stood across the clearing, his face twisted in that familiar snarl, the one that said he was done pretending we were anything but enemies wrapped in the same blood. We'd turned 16 at dawn, the weight of Pa's old stories pressing down like the humidity. Tales of the Sutton curse, how every set of twins in our line ended in blood on their birthday. I figured it was just whiskey-fueled nonsense until now, with the air thick and our eyes locked like hounds circling a kill. "Eli, put the knife down," I said, my voice steady but my heart hammering against my ribs. The blade in his hand glinted. Not the hunting knife we shared as kids, but the jagged one he'd sharpened all week in secret, whispering to himself about debts and destinies. Ma had tried to intervene at breakfast, her hands trembling as she portioned out the cornbread, but Elias shoved past her, muttering about the family ledger, the one Pa left behind, filled with tallies of land disputes and feuds that went back to the war. I knew what it meant. The neighbors had been eyeing our plot again, whispering that the Suttons were cursed land grabbers, and Elias, ever the hothead, had taken it personal. He laughed, a sharp bark that echoed off the oaks. "You think a gun changes anything, Abel? We're the same, you and me. Born together, die together, that's what the book says." He stepped closer, boots crunching the dry leaves, and I could see the wildness in his eyes. The same fever that took Uncle Josiah and his twin back in '52. I'd found the family Bible hidden under the floorboards last night. Its pages yellowed and stained, detailing every pair. Drowned in the river. Shot in a duel, poisoned by their own hand. Elias must have read it too because his grip on the knife tightened, veins bulging like roots breaking soil. I backed up against the cabin wall, the rough logs scraping my shoulders. The plan had been simple. Talk him down, ride into town for the preacher, break whatever hold this madness had. But he'd ambushed me here. Right after I checked the traps, his face pale as milk under the brim of his hat. It's the land, Abel, Pa's land. You always were the cautious one, waiting for handouts from the law. But I see it clear now, the curse ain't real, it's us. We're the payment for all the blood our kin spilled. His words came fast, laced with that gritty determination he'd honed chopping wood or tracking deer, but twisted now into something venomous. The shotgun trembled in my hands, not from fear but from the ache of knowing he was half right. We'd shared everything, the fever that nearly took us at 5, the secret fort in the woods where we'd sworn brotherhood eternal. But the war had changed things. Elias came back from scouting with the Confederates scarred inside, ranting about betrayals while I stayed home, tending the farm and Ma's fading health. The resource shortage hit hard this summer. Crops withered under the drought, and whispers of rival families, the Hargroves from across the ridge, poaching our water, turned to shouts. Elias blamed me for not fighting harder, for negotiating instead of drawing lines. I raised the gun higher, sighting down the barrel. We don't have to do this. Ma's inside, listening. The whole holler's gonna hear if we... A twig snapped behind me, but it was too late. Elias lunged, knife arcing like a hawk's dive, and I fired. The blast roared, splintering the air, and he jerked back, blood blooming on his shoulder. But he didn't stop. Momentum carried him forward, and his free hand clamped my wrist, twisting until the shotgun clattered to the ground. We grappled, twins mirroring each other's moves. His left hook met my dodge, my knee to his gut, answered by his elbow to my jaw. Pain exploded in my skull, stars bursting like fireflies in the dusk. We rolled into the underbrush, thorns tearing at our shirts, breaths ragged and synced even in hate. Why'd you have to be so damn weak? He gasped, pinning me with his weight, the knife hovering inches from my throat. His face was close, sweat mixing with the copper tang of blood, and for a split second I saw the boy he'd been, daring me to jump the creek first. But the fever burned brighter. He pressed down and I bucked, grabbing a rock from the dirt. It connected with his temple with a sickening thud and he slumped, eyes glazing. I scrambled up, chest heaving, the knife skittering away. Elias groaned, clutching his head, but he wasn't done. His hand fumbled for it, fingers slick with red. The cabin door creaked open then. Ma's silhouette framed in the fading light, her cry slicing the tension like a scythe. "Boys, Lord have mercy, what have you done?" She rushed out, skirts hiked, but the damage hung between us, irrevocable. The curse, if it was real, had claimed its due. Not in a blaze, but in this muddy tangle of kin and grudge. Elias met my gaze one last time. Accusation and sorrow mingling, before the world narrowed to the pulse in my ears and the sting of what we'd become. The lantern's flame flickered like a dying heartbeat as Elias pressed his back against the splintered door of the old Sutton barn. The air thick with the scent of damp hay and something sharper, gunpowder maybe, or just the metallic tang of fear. His twin's shadow loomed across the threshold, John's silhouette twisted by the moonlight slicing through the cracks in the walls, his rifle held low but steady, the barrel glinting like a promise. "You think hiding gonna save you, brother?" John's voice rasped, low and edged with that same wild glint they'd both inherited from their pa, the one that turned men into storms. Elias's fingers tightened around the handle of the family heirloom knife, its blade nicked from years of frontier scraps, now slick with his own sweat. 16 years they'd shared a womb, a cradle, a bloodline cursed with tempers that burned hotter than an Arkansas summer. And tonight it all boiled down to this, a duel born from whispers of land rights and old grudges that neither could rightly recall, but both felt in their bones. The barn creaked under a gust of wind, and Elias lunged not with fury but calculation, aiming to disarm rather than kill. Yet the shot rang out first, John's bullet grazing his shoulder, tearing fabric and flesh in a hot bloom of pain. He stumbled back, the knife clattering to the dirt floor, and for a split second their eyes locked, mirrors of each other, brown depths flecked with the same reckless fire. John lowered the rifle a fraction, his chest heaving. But the hesitation shattered when Elias's boot kicked up a puff of dust, sending the lantern tumbling. Flames erupted across the hay-strewn ground, racing toward the barrels of moonshine stacked in the corner, the alcohol-soaked wood igniting with a whoosh that lit their faces in hellish orange.
"Damn you, Eli!"
John shouted, but there was no venom left, only the raw edge of regret as he reached out a hand, pulling his twin toward the side door just as the first barrel exploded, shaking the rafters like thunder. They burst into the night coughing and singed, the barn a roaring pyre behind them that painted the sky in strokes of crimson. Elias collapsed against a fence post, clutching his bleeding arm, while John slumped nearby, the rifle discarded like a broken toy. The twins sat in silence, the fire's crackle the only sound, until John finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Ma always said we'd end like this, tearing each other apart over nothing." Elias nodded, wincing as he tore a strip from his shirt to bind the wound, the pain a sharp reminder that survival came at a cost. But as the flames consumed the last of their childhood secrets, a fragile truce settled between them, bought with blood and blaze, though the bloodline's shadow lingered, whispering of debts yet unpaid. I gripped the shotgun tighter, my palms slick with sweat and something darker, blood from Elias's earlier stumble. He was my twin, my mirror, but the way his eyes gleamed now, wild and unyielding, made him a stranger. We'd come this far chasing whispers of Pa's hidden gold, the kind that could buy us out of this dirt-poor life. But the map had led us straight into hell, a ravine swollen with spring rain, riddled with sinkholes that swallowed men whole. "Eli, we can't cross it," I whispered, my voice cracking like dry timber. The water roared below, churning mud and debris from upstream floods. Our plan had been simple: ford the creek at dawn, dig under the old oak before noon. But the rains had turned it into a beast, and now the rival Thompsons were closing in from the ridge, their silhouettes flickering against the tree line. They'd smelled the same treasure, or maybe just our desperation. He turned to me, his face a mask of that stubborn fire we'd shared since the cradle. "We ain't turning back, Jim. Pa died for this, and so will they if they try." His words hung heavy, laced with the madness that had been building since Ma's fever took her last winter. Twins we were, born under the same blood moon, but Elias had always been the bold one, charging where I hesitated. I nodded, hating the pull in my gut, the way our bond twisted like barbed wire. We edged along the bank, boots sinking into the soft earth. A shot cracked from above, Thompson lead whizzing past my ear and splintering bark. I dove behind a boulder, heart pounding, while Elias returned fire, the boom echoing like Judgment Day. "They're flanking us," I yelled, reloading with shaking hands. The gold was close. I could almost feel its weight, promising escape from the feuds that had claimed our kin for generations. But crossing meant risking the sinkholes, voids that had eaten lesser men. Elias grabbed my arm, his grip iron. Together, like always. "You spot, I lead." We scrambled forward, the ravine narrowing ahead where a fallen log bridged the worst of it. My boot tested the water, icy, pulling like hands from below. Another shot. This one grazed Elias's shoulder, spinning him with a curse. Blood bloomed on his shirt, dark as the secrets we'd unearthed. I hauled him up, our breaths mingling in ragged bursts. "Why'd Pa hide it here?" I muttered more to myself, the weight of 16 years pressing down. "Because he knew we'd fight for it," Elias gasped, pressing on. The log groaned under our steps, slick with moss. Halfway across, the world tilted. A sinkhole yawned beneath, the log cracking like bone. I lunged for solid ground, but Elias slipped, his hand brushing mine in that final electric touch. Time slowed. His eyes met mine, not with hate, but with the raw truth of brothers bound too tight. The current claimed him first, dragging him under with a scream that tore through me. I fired blindly at the Thompsons, shadows scattering as I clawed back to the bank. The oak loomed, its roots guarding the cache, but victory tasted like ash. Elias was gone, swallowed by the land that birthed us, and in that moment I knew the bloodline's curse. We'd kill each other, one way or another, before the day ended. The sun hung low over the Sutton homestead, painting the fields in blood-red streaks as if the earth itself mourned the day's toll. I clutched the shotgun, its barrel still warm from the shot that had ended it all, my hands trembling not from fear but from the weight of what we'd become. Elias lay sprawled in the dust, his eyes wide and unblinking, staring at the sky like he could see the curse lifting. But I knew better. The bloodline's shadow didn't fade so easy. "Maddie," came a whisper from behind the barn, faint as a dying breeze. It was Sarah, my Sarah, the one who'd warned me of the twins' madness from the start. She stepped out, her apron stained with the mud of our frantic run, eyes red from tears she wouldn't let fall. "Is it over? Tell me it's over." I lowered the gun, the metal clanging against a fence post like a final judgment. "One's down," I said, voice rough as gravel. But the others breathing still, hiding like the coward he always was. We'd chase them through the afternoon. Those Sutton boys, born the same minute, same scream, but twisted by whatever devilry their pa had bargained with back in '50. Twins who shared not just blood but a hunger, turning on kin like wolves in a pen. Their 16th birthday dawned with screams from the big house, and by noon old man Sutton was gutted, his fortunes scattered like chaff. The boys had turned on each other then, knives flashing in the parlor, but it wasn't enough. The curse demanded both, or it had claimed the whole line, including me, the cousin who'd married and foolish. Sarah grabbed my arm, her grip fierce. "We can't let it spread. Remember what the elder said? One survives, the hunger doubles. We end it here or Arkansas burns with us." I nodded, scanning the tree line where the last twin, Jacob, the sly one, had bolted. The air hummed with cicadas, thick and oppressive like the land held its breath. Footsteps crunched behind us. It was Tom, the hired hand, rifle slung over his shoulder, face etched with the grim resolve of a man who'd lost his own brother to border feuds. "Saw him head for the creek," Tom muttered. "Slippery as an eel, but wounded. Legs bleedin' bad." We moved as one, a ragged trio cutting through the underbrush, the Sutton acres closing in like a noose. Thorns snagged at my trousers, drawing blood that mixed with the sweat stinging my eyes. Every shadow seemed to twist into twin faces, Elias and Jacob laughing in the cradle, plotting in the fields. I'd grown up with their games, the way they'd finish each other's sentences, share secrets no one else heard. But today those secrets spilled red. A splash ahead, Jacob thrashing in the shallow water, his boot print muddied on the bank. He turned, knife in hand, the blade glinting like a serpent's tooth. "Stay back, Maddie. It's him or me, but not us both." His voice cracked, wild with pain and something darker, the curse's fire in his veins. I raised the shotgun, heart pounding like a war drum. Sarah flanked me, her derringer steady despite the shake in her breath. Tom circled wide, cutting off escape. "It's done, Jacob," I called, stepping closer, the water lapping at my boots. "You killed your own blood. Ain't no coming back from that." He lunged, a desperate arc, but Tom fired first, a crack that echoed off the hills. Jacob crumpled, knife splashing into the creek, his body twisting in the current like a broken doll. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by Sarah's sob. We stood there as dusk fell, the water carrying his blood downstream toward the river that had carved this cursed land. I holstered the gun, feeling the emptiness settle in my chest. The Sutton name ended with them, but the cost lingered. The homestead in ruins, whispers in town that'd follow us forever. Sarah slipped her hand into mine, warm and real. "We survived," she said softly. "That's enough." Tom spat into the water. "For now." As we turned back toward the flickering lights of home, I glanced at the darkening sky. No stars yet, but I felt them waiting, free of shadows at last. The bloodline was broken, but the scars would heal slow like the Arkansas soil after a flood. And in the quiet, I wondered if we'd truly escaped or if the hunger had just found a new vessel.